Most of the material I use is from the Homeric hymns, which is 8th century Greek. And I did the translation myself because when you retranslate this stuff, it's very interesting what you find, because a lot of the Greek that we have was translated by a Victorian gentleman in the 19th century who had a certain worldview. So and also we've now got a new Greek lexicon, so the translations of the words are more interesting also. So it was a good experiment to actually look at the source and see if it says what we were told they said. So I'm going to start off with the creation myth, which tells you about the beginning of the world. Eurynome, goddess of all things, rose naked from chaos, but found nothing substantial to rest her feet upon, and so she divided the sea from the sky, dancing alone on its waves. The goddess always dances. She danced towards the south, and the wind set in motion behind her seemed something new and different, with which to begin a work of creation. Turning around, she caught hold of the north wind, rubbed it between her hands, and created the great serpent Ophion. Eurynome danced to warm herself, spinning wildly, until Ophion, excited, coiled about those divine limbs and was moved to couple with her. Eurynome fell pregnant. Next she assumed the form of a dove, brooding on the waves, and in due process of time lay the universal egg. At her bidding, Ophion coiled 7 times around this egg, until it hatched and split in 2. Out tumbled all things that exist, her children, sun, moon, planets, stars, the earth with its mountains and rivers, its trees and herbs and living creatures. Eurynome and Ophion made their home on Mount Olympus, where he vexed her by claiming to be the author of the universe. Forthwith she bruised his head with her heel, kicked out his teeth, and banished him to the dark caves beneath the earth. She laid claim to her universe. The Paleolithic period is said to have been between 50,000 and 30,000 BCSE, when the glaciers that covered much of Europe began to disappear and Homo sapiens appeared. The steppes replaced the barren ground, and eventually herds of cattle roamed the land, and the steppe gave way to thick forest. Settlers grouped around the rivers and lived in nearby caves. For at least 20,000 years, people lived, worshipped, and decorated these caves. Some of the most spectacular cave paintings and sculptures have been discovered in the Dordogne. Sacred space was created in these caves. Labyrinths, statues, goddess figures sprinkled with red ochre, probably representing blood, pregnant women, images of the crescent moon, the figure pointing to her swollen belly. The Neolithic period followed, around 10,000 to 3,000 BCSE. The weather became more settled and people began to gather in groups. They came out of the caves and they lived on the land. As the weather got warmer, people built houses, temples, villages were built. The sowing of grain, the harvesting, bread making, pot making, weaving fires for clothes now the frost was gone, using plants for remedies, dyes and sacred ritual, all done by women, while the men still fished and hunted to supplement their diet. Because there was a reliable source of food, it meant that there was more leisure time to do art, to be creative. And so many small figures were made and discovered. Marija Gumbatas unearthed treasures of the Neolithic period in an area that she called Old Europe, which stretched from Kiev to southern Italy, to Malta, northern Greece, to Crete and Anatolia or Turkey. Her study of the arts shows how this period transmitted to Bronze Age Crete and Greece, and how the goddess was worshipped in these places. The goddess in all her manifestation was the symbol of the unity of all life in nature Her power was in water and stone, tomb and cave, animals and birds, snake, fish, hill, tree and flower. Old Europe flourished for about 2,000 years until Aryan Indo-European tribes came from the east, possibly Mongolia. These were nomads and they worshipped sky gods. They rode horses and they wielded the axe. And the old ways were destroyed, all except for the civilization in Crete and parts of Greece. Homer in the Odyssey mentions Crete. He says, "There is a land called Crete in the middle of the wine-dark sea, a fair, rich land surrounded with water, and countless people live there in 90 cities, and their languages are mixed. There are Achaeans, native Cretans, long-haired Dorians, and Pelasgians. Knossos is there, one mighty city." That's from the Odyssey. The Minoan civilization is believed to have begun with the migration of people from Asia Minor across the Aegean Sea to Crete, and its flowering was 1600 to 1400 BCE. Around 1400, there were a series of fires on Crete, and her power waned. It may have been that mainland Mycenaeans destroyed her, or it was earthquakes, or a combination of these things. Crete, or Zakatiri, was self-sufficient, had great forests of oak, cypress, and fir, with which they built houses and temples. There was abundant water from melted snow from the mountains, and food from the rich alluvial plains. There were domesticated animals, olive oil, honey, fish from the sea. The palace temple complexes were large buildings used to store food, house people, and perform rituals. Houses could be several stories high, and the walls were painted with brightly coloured murals. The greatest of these temple palaces was at Knossos. Crete had writing, which was later forgotten. Linear B was an early form of Greek, which the Mycenaeans and the mainland Greeks used when they traded. Crete was a sea power, and it traded with Cyprus, Syria, Anatolia, Egypt, Palestine, Mesopotamia, and as far west as the Iberian Peninsula. No image of a god has been found in Neolithic Crete, but the young male figures appear as consorts or helpers of the priestesses. Minoan religion is focused on female deities with women priestesses. Historians and archaeologists are skeptical of a matriarchy. However, it's clear that in Minoan society, women held positions of sacred and temporal. Old English serpent goddess appears in Crete. She appears holding up snakes with her hands, her bare breast showing to indicate nature and life. These statues often have a trance-like face, suggesting they were ritual objects. Priestesses constructed religious ceremonies, often depicting holding snakes in their hands or coiled around their arms. The snakes may represent life and death as snakes shed their skin. And again, like before, there was an invasion of foreigners, and it caused the downfall of the Cretan society. The image of the father god appears, and there begins the separation between nature and man, dark from light, sky from earth, male from female. The change from the mystical immanent goddess to the hierarchical punishing gods mirrored what happened in the culture. As we move nearer the Iron Age, there's a change in the relationship between people and animals. Initially, the relationship was benign. There were snakes and lions adoring the goddesses. With the replacement of masculine gods, it began the debasement of the feminine. where once women and animals walked the land in safety, they then became prey and became loathsome dragons who need to be destroyed. The sacred animals of Cretan goddesses are demonized. Dogs, lions, goats, snakes are killed by male heroes such as Pegasus, Bellerophon, and Heracles. The old respect for nature and closeness to animal was lost. Animals became the enemy to be exploited and killed. The sacred becomes personified in named gods and is removed from nature, which it previously embodied. Gods and priests carry weapons or take an aggressive stance and are increasingly found not in nature, but in huge buildings which dwarf humans to emphasize their powerlessness against divine wrath. So that's the background, and we believe that Cretan influences, Mycenaean influences, then went on to influence the Greek goddesses. If we go back to Crete, there's not much information except visual material culture. Then we look to the Homeric hymns, which are the 6th to the 8th century, so much later on, like another 700 years. We start to find information about goddesses, pre-goddesses, goddesses before the Olympians. Does anyone want me to do a particular sign? Or shall I just, anyone got?
Gemini?
Gemini, let's do Gemini. Well done, Gemini. Speaking up.
Purely for selfish reasons.
Sorry?
Purely for selfish reasons.
Okay, the goddess for Gemini is Iris, goddess of the rainbow. She was the daughter of the Titan Thaumas, Wonder, and the Oceanid Electra. So she was born from a union of the sky and the water, Iris. She was the personification of the rainbow, and more generally the relationship between heaven and earth, gods and humankind, which the rainbow represents, because it's that amazing spectacle connecting heaven to the lands, to the water. Iris is sometimes said to be the wife of Zephyrus the west wind and the mother of Eros. There's a quote on a pot that Iris wrapped herself in the cloak of 1,000 colours and painted the sky with the arc of the rainbow. Iris is the messenger of Hera, and she wore her cloak of many colours as she helps manage the ecology of the world. Iris means speaker or perhaps mouthpiece, and also Erinye, which is the old word for peace. Iris was the link between gods and men and between the gods themselves when they were quarrelling. She was both a messenger and a mediator. Iris appears in the Iliad, which predates the Odyssey, by which time she's replaced by Hermes. There are two images of Iris: rainbows that portend the storm of war. She also brings messages. Iris is known for her speed, and those times when out of the clouds the snow or hail whirls cold between the blast of the north wind. Iris has a persuasive manner. Then in turn swift-foot Iris answered him, Poseidon, will you change a little? The hearts of the great can be changed. The other thing that Iris does is she's a psychopomp, and that means she could travel between heaven, earth, and the underworld. So she was a messenger between the three worlds. And there's a lovely example in the Aeneid where she comes to Dido. You may know that Aeneas took Dido as a lover, Dido, Queen of Carthage, and then he abandoned her and she was broken-hearted. And Iris was sent to stop the suffering of Dido. And this is from the Aeneid. So then dewy Iris flew down from heaven with saffron plumes, trailing thousands of multicoloured hues facing against the sun. She stood by Dido's head whispering, this I was ordered to do, to carry a sacrifice to Hades, and so I unbind your body. And so it happened. With her right hand, Iris cut Dido's hair. Then all the warmth melted away from her, and Dido's life departed into the wind. Which I think is so beautiful, so beautiful. because I think that whatever you feel about death, there is that sense of wind and blowing and lifting off. And Iris is merciful. But as a true Gemini, she has two faces. She will also bring punishment to the wicked. In the madness of Heracles, Iris appears with Lysa madness to punish Heracles, who has offended Iris's companion Hera. Iris, she says, I am Iris, handmaiden of the gods. We come to do no harm to your city. We join forces against the body of one man only. Hera wills it to fix upon him fresh blood guilt by killing his children, and I wish the same. I lay my hands on him so he might suffer. Send madness upon that man and child slaughter. Show him tumult and send out frenzy. Drive him to be murderous. Then he will understand this rage of Hera's and mine. So she can be both, killing and curing, compassionate and merciful. Because Heracles offended Hera by going for, in his 12 labors of Hercules, he started to destroy the natural world and her animals. Iris is one of the few gods that can enter Hades and return. She has a sacred duty to carry the waters of the Styx back up to Olympus. She's the person that bears witness to oaths. An air sign, Iris is wide-ranging, unpredictable, changeable, unbounded. She speaks to the gods and also mortals. She connects the upper world with the lower world, the world of the humans and gods of the upper and underworld. Air signs do not like much physicality. They like the wide open, airy spaces of the mind. They need stimulus for their minds and love to chatter, and like Iris are connectors, networkers, who move quickly between worlds. It is not unusual for them to have many separate spheres of friends in their lives who represent different interests. They are kept apart and would be surprised if they met each other. They are so different. Iris connects, but is not affected by whatever she meets. She can be in the underworld or with the gods and is equally at ease in either world. She can enter and leave the underworld at liberty, unlike anyone else, and registers and reports, but experiences slide off her. She's more about collecting experience and less about experiencing them. For this reason, Geminis can be called superficial, but really they are interested in everything, especially bright, shiny things and people. Iris is the servant. She is also the shapeshifter, inconstant but flexible, able to fit into many situations. She may suffer from being all things to all people. Many politicians and journalists are Gemini. They can be changeable, adaptable, quick on their feet, good debaters, and some people say they might be slippery. So the two that I picked were Starhawk, who has the Sun in Gemini conjunct Mars and Mercury, all of those conjunct her midheaven. As you may know, Starhawk is an author, an activist and a witch and a worshipper of the goddess, and she's been the voice of powerful ecofeminism. She was one of the first to reclaim the tradition of witchcraft that was founded in the late 19th century. She was also a trainer in non-violence and direct action, and an activist in the peace movement. She teaches and travels widely in North America, Europe, and the Middle East. What she says about the teachings of the goddess are: the heritage culture, the knowledge of ancient priestesses, healers, poets, singers, and seers were nearly lost, but a seed survived the flames that will blossom in a new age into thousands of flowers. The long sleep of the mother goddess is ended. May she awaken in each of our hearts. She also talks about in her work, Starhawk, the need to go into the darkness, into the underworld, just like Iris. The depths of our own beings are not all sunlit. To see clearly, we must be willing to dive into the dark inner abyss and acknowledge the creatures we find there. In the craft, we do not believe in the goddess. We connect with her through the moon, the stars, the ocean, the earth, through trees, animals, through other human beings, through ourselves. And this is a lovely piece. Remember when I talked about Dido, this is a lovely piece that Starhawk talks about the sacred art of dying. It's a prayer to set the soul free from the body. May the wind carry her spirit gently. May the fire release her soul. May the water cleanse her. May the earth receive her. May the goddess take her in her arms and guide her to rebirth. Which I think is lovely. And the other one was Josephine Baker. Some of you may know Josephine Baker. She had Mercury, Sun, Jupiter, Pluto and Mars all conjunct in Gemini. Super Gemini. And she was a dancer and a performer. Hard life, black woman in America in the 1920s, who found her home in France and a freedom in France. Air needs space to breathe and freedom to think. Paris, home to intellectuals, writers and jazz musicians, welcomed her, and she became a sensation. She also performed with her pet cheetah, Chiquita, who wore a diamond collar, and from time to time she let the cheetah loose from its holding and scared the audience. She was quite naughty, I think. And the French press was enthusiastic. They described her as Nefertiti, the Queen of Sheba and Cleopatra. Ernest Hemingway, who was in Paris at the time, called her the most sensational woman I ever saw. Being mutable, Iris makes an excellent spy because she's able to be all things to all people and slips between worlds effortlessly. When war broke out in France in 1939, Josephine was recruited by the French intelligence Deuxième Bureau to spy on France's enemies. She performed her cabaret in embassies, nightclubs, and it gave her the opportunity to listen to the talk amongst the enemy, Italians, Japanese, and Germans, because as a woman, especially a woman of colour, she was completely invisible, except when she was on stage. And then she would report back to her bosses in the French government. When the Germans invaded France, Josephine left Paris to live on her estate in the Dordogne, where she sheltered free French volunteers, provided them with fake visas. Again, that lying is sometimes very handy. It's sometimes exactly what you need, or that sleight of hand. So, false visas, organised entertainment for the free French fighters. In recognition of her war work, she was awarded the Croix de Guerre by the leader of the Free French, de Gaulle. Of course, when she went back to America, it was a very different story. She was treated badly, but she was a friend of Martin Luther King, and she spoke at big rallies. There was a parade in front of 100,000 people in Harlem, and she was called the Woman of the Year. And May the 20th, 1951 was declared Josephine Baker Day. She also had this idea about family, and she decided to adopt children, and she called them her rainbow family. Remember, Iris is the rainbow. Children of different ethnicities and religions could still be brothers. So she adopted 12 children from France, Morocco, Korea, Japan, Colombia, Finland, Israel, Algeria, Ivory Coast and Venezuela, and they all lived together in her huge chateau. And that's a very sort of Gemini Iris experiment. How will this work? Is this a good idea? She remained a huge celebrity in France. When she died, more than 20,000 people crowded the streets of Paris to watch her funeral, and she was given a 21-gun salute. So a lovely story for Gemini and her rainbow family. Does anyone else want me to talk about?
Scorpio?
Scorpio, oh yes. Yes, let's do that. Persephone. Right. Persephone, queen of the underworld, is the dark sister of Kor, the maiden goddess. Kor represents joy and hope. Persephone is referred to as that dread goddess. In the myth, perhaps Persephone was tricked by Hades into swallowing a pomegranate seed. Perhaps he tempted her. Or perhaps she chose to do so after spending some time in her new kingdom. After all, is it better to be a queen than an eternal daughter? For Scorpio, the answer will always be a queen. Hades offered her to be mistress of everything that lives and moves. But it's possible that having tasted the food of Hades, Persephone was bound by the sacred bond of Xenia, which is brotherhood, really, sisterhood, and so she had to stay loyal to her host. The pomegranate is also a symbol of fertility and death, the blood red juice. Scorpio is the female expression of Mars, which we've lost in modern astrology. She is a warrior, but she's a more subtle and indirect way, because this is Mars in a water sign. So she flows and ebbs and pulls like water. She's also a fixed sign, and always with fixity, there is the issue of getting stuck. When water gets stuck, there's a possibility of poisoning, corruption, and toxicity. Her marriage with Hades was a barren one. There are no children. But Persephone has queenly duties and attributes over issues to do with the dead. A messenger is sent to Hades to bring Persephone back to her mother. And Hades agrees to let Persephone go. And he says, "Go, Persephone, to your dark-veiled mother, kind in your heart, with strength and spirit. Don't be angry beyond what is reasonable for anything. For it is not shameful for you, one of the immortals, for me to be your husband. And here you will be queen of everyone who lives and moves here, and you will bear the greatest honor amongst us immortals. And those who wrong you, for those who don't appease your power with sacrifices and offerings purely given, and perform fit and proper rituals, their punishment will be everlasting." Thus he spoke, and a very thoughtful Persephone rejoiced, and swiftly she leapt up with joy. So Hades offers a kingdom, formidable powers over both the living and the dead, and eternal punishment for those who do not honor her. Persephone was very thoughtful, perhaps weighing up what was offered her. Then Hades gave her a pomegranate seed to eat secretly. So there is the offer of the power and also the trick. It's the beauty of the flower that catches Persephone, the sweetness of the pomegranate which ambushes her again. Being queen of Hades is a powerful role, but not a sweet one. There is no light in Hades, there are no flowers. If she wants this power, Persephone will have to let go of beauty and sweetness. And here is a teaching for Scorpio. Power lies in the dark, hidden depths which are unpalatable for many mortals to contemplate. Persephone reigns in the land of the dead, in the darkness. Scorpio knows this country well. They nearly always, in my experience, suffer a life trauma when young, which shapes and informs their lives hereafter. Scorpios lose their innocence early. They know the darkness, and they often experience abuses of power or death of family members in childhood, which teaches them that grief, pain and suffering are part of a way of life. Develops a hard shell and a resilience which can create cynicism and cruelty. When Persephone rises from Hades, she brings spring growth, but also death to the upper world. With life there is always death, with shadow always light. The mysteries of Eleusis were believed to act out the rape of Persephone and her return. Celebrants were processed from Athens to Eleusis, a 14-mile journey along the sacred way. The Telesterion, place of initiation, where rituals took place, were open to men and women. The secret of the mystery was preserved, and we can only guess what occurred. Like Persephone and Hades, the true treasure of Scorpio lies deep underground. In the unconscious, in those areas of life that are taboo: power, sex, death, and money. Scorpios, along with Capricorns, but for different reasons, often become wealthy. They understand that money is power and sexy, and they love the competition, the chase of getting rich. For Scorpio, it is not so much the money itself, but the dominance and control that money brings, the risk-taking and competition. Likewise, Scorpio's enchantment with sex, it is the conquest, the deep exploration of her sexual nature which fascinates. Cozy cuddles are not really on the menu here, or if they are, it's a byproduct. Of course, in the post-classical world, the main realm of Hades is the unconscious, things that are buried deep within us. Psychotherapy was developed in the 1920s, when Pluto, the co-ruler of Scorpio, was found. Besides worldly treasures, the real treasure of Scorpio lies in exploring the unconscious with courage, as it is a fearful place, full of ghosts, compulsions, and illusions. Knowledge is power. The Scorpio who is able to explore these depths gains a self-mastery which cannot be shaken by external events. Scorpio is the second sign of the collective. Here we integrate the dark with the light and stand witness to our personal and collective shadows. Scorpios can make people feel uncomfortable, as if they have X-ray vision, and they do. Some signs live in the future, like Aries and Aquarius, but Scorpio lives underground, sees all our games and power plays, tracks our motives and weaknesses. For this reason, I think Persephone chose to take the pomegranate and tie herself to the Dark Lord. She understood that she could not enjoy the sunny uplands as Kor, the maiden, unless she too descended and made peace with the dead. There were two major festivals of Persephone. Sappho, writing in the 8th century, said, "People who are not initiated in the mysteries of Persephone, when they would die, they would be unmourned and forever forgotten." The fact that Persephone had eaten while in Hades was gleefully Scorpio is the sister who will bring up the dark, difficult, unpalatable truths. She is the visitor to the dark realm of the taboo. My Scorpio lady is Georgia O'Keeffe, who has Jupiter, part of fortune, Sun, Moon, Mercury, and her ascendant in Scorpio. So she's a triple Scorpio. And you may have seen some of her paintings, these huge paintings of flowers. Yeah. Have a look at her paintings, because she painted flowers, and the reason she painted flowers is because she said people don't take no notice of flowers. They're small and insignificant. I'm going to paint them so large you cannot not take notice of them. And other people saw them as vaginas and vulvas, and she said, "No, I don't see that." But really, when you look at them, what has she painted? And she had a life. She had quite a life. She had a Dark Lord, Stieglitz, who ran a art gallery in New York, who took her on and made her famous, and then discarded her for a younger model. She suffered with mental health issues. She ended up living in the desert, which I feel is a very Scorpionic place. Deserts are incredibly beautiful but barren. They have that juxtaposition of barrenness and beauty. And what she said, "I have been absolutely terrified every moment of my life, and I've never let it keep me from doing a single thing I wanted to do." Right? Any other Scorpio? It's like courage, because it's a female expression of Mars, but very subtle. Thank you.
We've got about 5 minutes for questions and answers. If anyone's got any questions for Elisabeth.
I'm wondering if you see any connection between, well, the relationship between Euronime and Ophion on one side, and the relationship between the Gnostic Sophia and her son Yaldabaoth Saklas.
I think so, absolutely. I think it's a commonality of how we explain the world. I think so, yes. Yes, I do. I just love her because she dances and she plays with the winds and she, yeah. Yeah.
Questions?
Sorry, I was just when you were doing your research for the book, did you find what were real surprises for you when you were harmonising the mythologies with traditional astrology? Did you come up with any surprises and everything? Were you like, gosh, this is a perfect fit for every single?
It was Hestia was a bit of a strain because Hestia I give to Cancer, and that fits because Hestia is the goddess of the hearth, but not much is written about her. Who I loved was Hera. I did not know about these. Hera was the goddess centuries before Zeus was around. There's huge temples of her in Paestum, and people came from far away Syria to worship her. I did not know that because what you get in the Olympic gods is you get Hera as this bad-tempered wife who's always embarrassed. And actually, if you read the Homeric hymns, she's this rage of a woman. She's a rage of a woman, and she creates a child parthenogenically by banging on the earth, which is a very interesting. She creates this, which is described as a dragon or a serpent that she creates, and it goes into the waters near Delphi, and it's all connected with that snaky, dragony energy that's female. And so Hera was wonderful, and Leo, because there is that thing about Leo, isn't there? The dignity and the outrage if they're treated badly. Utter outrage when they're treated badly. Yeah.
Thank you.